Hello and welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Yes, please let us know where you're signing in from in the chat window. That's fantastic. My name is Meenakshi. I'm with Coacharya, and my pleasure to welcome all of you today. We're in week 3 of our global virtual conference, Awake, Aware, Arise. Happy to welcome all of you again. If this is your first session, welcome. And if you're coming back, really happy to have you back. Today we have a fantastic panel discussion set up titled Strength in Uncertainty. So we're just going to give it another minute and we'll get started. Keep the chats coming in the meantime. And just one quick reminder, actually two. One, this session is being recorded and it'll be made available on Coacharya's YouTube channel. And second, for all your chat messages, please make sure that you mark it to all panelists and attendees so that all of us can see your messages. So it's 1 minute after, so I guess we'll get started. Once again, thank you everyone for joining. And today the topic is strength and uncertainty, and that's our panel discussion. And I'm happy to pass it off to Shahmeen to kick us off. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi, and welcome everyone. It's so wonderful to be with you. We're going to start by actually spending about 5 minutes just getting grounded. So here's what I'd like you to do. Slip off your shoes if you can, and let your feet come to rest flat on the floor. And then just let your palms rest, palms facing down in your lap, wherever feels comfortable for you. And allow your eyes to come to closed or partially closed, whatever feels best. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I feel a bit dizzy. So leaving them sort of half closed feels a little bit better. So you decide what's best for you. And just let yourself take a couple of breaths here, leaving whatever you were up to just before you got here, leaving that in the past. And letting whatever you're going to be engaged with later today, let that be off to the side for you to pick up later when we're done. And just settle into this present moment. And I want to invite you to take your awareness now and place it into your feet. So just let your mind's eye kind of travel down to your feet as they are on the floor. And just imagine for a moment that your feet, they're kind of like this organic thing, like a tree perhaps, or some vines that can grow some roots down into the earth. Letting these roots, these imaginary roots or energetic roots, make their way down. Imagine they can just go through whatever structure is under your feet and into the earth and kind of tap into what I call the earth's essence energy. And if this feels silly or funny, it's okay. It's all an experiment. We're just experimenting with allowing ourselves to connect to the earth, to get grounded, to be present, to be here in this moment. And we'll just spend another minute or so enjoying this feeling of connecting, rooting with the earth. Just imagining that these roots are just helping you to, just like a tree, weather whatever storms or windy times come from the outside, that these roots just help you to remain centered in yourself, no matter what. And we'll just take 3 more breaths here. And 1 more deep breath in. And exhaling. And just allowing yourself to appreciate these moments of grounding and connection as you bring your awareness from that inner place to this interpersonal place that includes all of us here together. You can wiggle your fingers and toes. Maybe roll your shoulders a little bit as you come back, letting the roots just relax now, and gently opening your eyes when you feel ready. And I will pass us over to Meg, who will take it from here.
Thank you so much, Shahmeen. Thank you for the grounding, and welcome to everyone. And I also want to thank Coacharya and Meenakshi and everyone who helped to organize this conference, and to all of you for showing up, and to my fellow panelists. Grounding is such an important part of strength, and we will get to that in just a bit. But I wanted to introduce you all to this topic around strength and uncertainty. And I think we can agree that in 2020, we all share a common sense of uncertainty about what's around the next corner. And so as this year continues to unfold and confound us, we need strength and groundedness in order to combat all the chaos that we feel inside and outside. So the question that we are sitting with today for this panel is, how do we draw strength or practice strength in these times of uncertainty? And we are, and we'll introduce ourselves in a little bit, but we're a seasoned group of facilitators who set an intention together to kind of make this an unpanel, meaning make it highly interactive, highly participatory, and experimental. So today we are not the experts, and we're going to be in this exploration with you around how does strength show up, and how might we invite practices of strength into our day-to-day, both in our work, in our personal lives. And so we've created just a very light structure today to guide you all through, and we'll be passing the baton back and forth between myself and the other panelists. We have some exercises for you, and again, we just really welcome your participation. And now I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Kathryn Snyder, to begin with a check-in for all of us. So welcome, welcome, and I hand it off to Kathryn.
Thanks, Meg. And for those of us on the Zoom that can see my friend Jen Urso that's on, she and I are on the same Zoom some of the times because of a dance party that we host every morning, a couple times a week. And so have no fear. Hi, Jen. She is a participant today. So, so wanted to do a check-in, and we're going to do a chatterfall. And for those of you that don't know what it is, I'm going to put the question out there. I'm going to type it in the chat, and then we want you to respond, but don't hit enter on the chat. So we want you to type your message. I'm going to give you like 30 seconds to think about it. Type it in the chat. And then when I say go is when everybody's going to hit enter on the chat at the same time, and we'll just see what shows up. And so that's what a chatterfall is. So the question, or the short one question check-in is, what's a sensation you're experiencing or noticing in your body right now? And I'm going to type it in there right now. Check in. So type it in, but don't hit return yet. I'm going to give it a few moments. I'm looking at my notes as if I have to remember this, because it's not that hard to remember. And if I spelled anything wrong, you'll just have to forgive me. So here's the check-in. What's a sensation you're experiencing in your body at this moment? Take 10 seconds or so. I'm getting mine ready to go. All right, I'm gonna say 3, 2, 1. And when I say the word one, everybody hit enter. All right, in 3, 2, 1. Woo, there it is. So thank you. And with that, I see some tightness, butterflies, some neck pain, anticipation, cold feet and hands. Yes, thank you. And thank you for getting connected to what's here now and what's emerging for you. And with that, I will turn it over to Carol.
Thank you, Kathryn. Yeah, thank you. Both the grounding and also the check-in helps me to be a little more connected with what is going inside as well as outside. And so today, I think, shall we first be more open ourselves up to each other and to go a little deeper within. Maybe the prompt can be, let's share a real story where we observe others or ourselves demonstrate strength in uncertainty. The others can be broadly defined, doesn't have to be a person. So we each have 5 minutes, and let's also allow some silence in between to let whatever we share touch each other's heart, and whatever comes up, we can also be more aware. I'm happy to be the timekeeper, and when there's 1 minute left, I will, give you a notice, and then you can just nod so that I know you see it. And then the, like alarm will go off if when 5 minutes is up. And please start by giving us a little bit introduction of who you are. Shall we begin? And let's just do popcorn style. Whoever feels moved to share can go first.
I'm happy to start. I got excited about this when I saw your question, Carol, so I had a chance to think about it. So I'm ready. So my name's Kathryn Snyder. I live in Richmond, Virginia right now. And I'm what they call in the US an Army brat. So my dad worked for the Army growing up. And so we moved around a bunch. And I say that, so I was born in Japan, raised in Germany. And I say that because there was a lot of uncertainty every time I went, to a new school. And my birthday's in early September. And so if I couldn't make friends in the first few days, I was going to be solo on my birthday. And that was a big motivator. And so So I feel like I grew up in a lot of uncertainty in my external environment, and somehow nature nurture. There was a lot of certainty and groundedness in my family, in my immediate family. So that made it all okay. I'm a coach. I used to call myself an executive coach and a leadership coach, but really I'm a life coach because it's all one life. And these days I want to call myself a joy coach because that's what I want to help bring into the world through the coaching work that I do with people and organizations. And before I tell my story, I wanted to talk about my who I am as a person that actually informs the story. And I was thinking about, so what is it that allows me to have strength and uncertainty? And it all starts with my belief system that is really grounded in hope and trust in the good. I have a natural bent of, the cup is half full and that it's all going to work out for the good. And so that's kind of where everything starts. And then that is led through being authentically who I am, which is guided by my values. And these days my values are joy, freedom, and ease. And I try to know, like, in order to know what would bring me joy, what makes me feel free, what's the easy way, I need grace and space. So I need room, I need time, and I need to give myself grace in order to connect to who I really am, what my values are, and decide and choose from there. And I also want to, express joy, freedom, and ease through courage and kindness. So that's kind of my framework for how I live my life. And so my story is, in April of last year, I was actually with Meg in Boston, and we were doing some cool coachy stuff and visioning for what we wanted next for our lives as well as our work. And I kept getting this message that I needed to rest. And I listened, and I got it a bunch of times over this weekend that we were together with some other coach colleagues as well. And so what I did is I decided to listen, and I decided to clear the decks, and I fired a bunch of clients, and I said no to a bunch of work I didn't want to do. And I created a bunch of space, and I'd never done that before without having a clear line of sight to what was going to replace it. Usually whenever I said no to something, I knew what was going to come in and backfill it from a financial perspective. And I did it without knowing that. And so that was kind of, but my belief system of I trust, I believe it's all for the good, allowed me to say, I'm going to go for it. And I'm going to trust that this is coming to me for a reason at this time, and it's going to be okay. And so in that pause, which I ended up letting be for over a year, what was important was creating space. I had been in this back-to-back, kind of life for 20 plus years. And it was through that message of rest and pause that I started putting in some really strong boundaries around, like, I'm not going to start work until 11 a.m. Eastern time because my mornings are when I'm at my best, and I need to use those for me. And I started to protect days so that I wasn't having to follow my calendar every day. I needed to be in flow. And in doing that, that was when the clarity around, I want to pursue joy, I want to pursue freedom, I want to pursue ease, became clear to me over that time. And those lenses have totally transformed my life. And that last one of ease is the most recent one and the biggest these days, because I can overcomplicate anything. Like, as soon as I get a thing, I go into my head and get ready for complications. So the uncertainty was, what's going to happen to my finances? Thanks, Carol. What's going to happen to my future? Is this going to work? And even more, what's on the other side of this? And what I can say now is I have so much clarity. I have so much groundedness. And just in the last 2 days, I've had a couple conversations that blew the doors off and showed me the how of my way forward. And it's all in alignment with who I want to be and what I want to bring into the world. And so that's how I've navigated strength in my own uncertainty. At least I haven't always felt strong, but I felt supported by my community and my belief system, and that this was the right thing to do. And I was ready for this. So hope that's useful and helpful. And Thanks for the time. And with that, I'm just going to go on mute and let whoever feels next or feels like jumping in next to jump in.
I'm happy to go. And thank you, Kathryn, for sharing. I'll start my own timer. Yeah, so it's interesting. The reason I want to go is I actually sense a different perspective from me from what Kathryn was talking about. So I think it will be kind of fun to throw a quite different kind of fundamental assumption about life. These days I'm kind of also reading a lot of, kind of a philosophy from like Stoicism and also existentialism. Oh, I'm Carol, by the way. I forgot to introduce myself. I always do that the last. I used to study organizations and how people work in organizations and how people can work differently in organizations and what are some of the bottlenecks for autonomy and creativity. And then I realized that I want to be more. I don't want to be in academia anymore because I don't want to just write theories for 5 people in the world to read. So then after my PhD, I started to really find my own group of people of embedding some of these alternative organizational design principles in practice and experiment with a group of colleagues of mine. So that's a short introduction. And the kind of perspective I want to share, which can be a little fun, that's a little different from Kathryn's, is that what I heard from what Kathryn said is, because she believed in the good, whatever, at the end of the day, the good will emerge. So trusting the kindness, the compassion, trusting the good in the world. Recently, I think over the last few years, I start to actually see the absurdity of life, meaning that despite how rational we want to be as human beings, how much we want stability and certainty, universe is actually pretty much an emergent phenomenon. And even if some of my friends who believe in have any religious beliefs, even God is beyond our conception. It is beyond the human understanding. So there's a lot of things that we're like, why would this happen? So long story short, I actually believe that the world is because the emergence is actually not necessarily, it's beyond our control, and the outcome most of the time it's beyond our control. So why not enjoy the moment I have at this moment, and let strength in the situation come through me. So a quick story is that when I was doing my dissertation, I hit a wall of productivity. there's no external barriers. It's all internal judgments. And I just couldn't be productive. And and the fast forward a few years, I got stuck for a few years. I was so close to depression. And then I got through. So from the outside, maybe people would say, oh, you're so strong, you know, you toughened through. But do you know what got me through in those few years? I was just like, it's beyond my control whether to get my degree or not. So I might as well just take a break, and then I'll do what the little bit I can do. And if they kick me out, they kick me out. So that was to just completely let go the outcome and not believe that something good is going to happen to me. But regardless, I let go and I do what I can. At that point in time, my productivity is almost, okay, my time is up. I'll wrap it up. At that time, my productivity is almost close to zero, if not negative. So I just lived with it. And I even gave birth to a kid during my PhD, just because I don't want to wait. I don't want to try to get that external goal anymore. I want to go for what I want in life. So through that, I actually got a kind of strength that I never had before, is that strength of letting go. And at the end of the, fast forward, I actually got my degree and everything. People, might have a different story of what got me through. But now I share the secrets to all of you. All right, I'll stop there. Thank you.
Well, I will go next. My name is Meg Buzzi, and I'm a coach and a facilitator based in Los Angeles. And but my bio and my story kind of merged together, because for the last couple decades, I've worked almost exclusively in really large institutions. So federal government, federal agencies, state government, and academia, higher education, big public universities. And there's a lot of strength in those institutions. Those institutions are heavy. They have big structures to them. And I was noticing, a couple years ago that I felt really constrained by the structure. And what I noticed inside these institutions, inside the university I was working at, was that even though there were all these protocols and formalities and hierarchy and structure, there was still an enormous amount of uncertainty in the work we were doing, in the community inside the institution, in the conversations we had with one another. And it began this process of me noticing how the institutions that I thought were there to prop me up or prop us up, they weren't providing strength for me anymore. So the complexity and the chaos and the uncertainty that I felt emerging in my work no longer felt supported or held by the institutions that were trying to contain it. So when I think about uncertainty, I think about how we as humans build structures and build things in order to make things certain, to make things foundational, to create categories, to create boxes, to create ways of making sense in the world. And for me, there came this moment about 2 years ago when I decided that I just couldn't function inside those boxes anymore. I needed to find another source of strength. And so much like Kathryn's story, I walked away from working at those institutions, and it was walking right into like an even bigger chasm of uncertainty. So the uncertainty I was feeling on a daily basis actually became multiplied when I stepped out of the institution and realized, okay, if there is no structure, I'm going to have to build it for myself. And so for me, the strength and uncertainty as a phrase is just calls to mind for me the practice of building these structures for ourselves individually. And one of the calls I think in this time is to create practices and habits and cycles for ourselves that replace some of these structures that no longer hold us or no longer carry us. So for me, it was about, first and foremost, beginning a sitting practice, a contemplative practice or meditative practice as a ritual every day, as a structure that I put into my day to allow myself space to make sense and allow myself to sort of sit in the uncertainty that I was feeling and to acknowledge it and to notice it was there and to articulate it and to process it and kind of make friends with it, smile at it. There you are, all that chaos, hello. Instead of reacting to it, instead of being afraid of it, or allowing that fear to come and be processed. And so for me, dealing with uncertainty is about almost moment to moment or day to day or week to week, creating these opportunities for yourself to feel structure. Thank you, Carol. And to feel like we can own and create those institutions for ourselves now. And that we even have a responsibility to do it for ourselves. So I just want to tie together the themes of what both Carol and Kathryn were saying. I heard them both say that one of the keys was space, which I totally agree with. The space that Carol took inside of her PhD program, or the space that Kathryn took when she cleared some of her clients off of her roster. And for me, that space was really going internal and making a commitment to creating space for myself on a daily basis outside any kind of work construct, and giving myself that extra room to breathe and be with whatever was emerging. So that's mine. Thank you so much. And I'll pass it along to my
I can go next unless Shahmeen, unless you want to. Go. So last Saturday, just a few days ago, my wife and I, we took a little bit of a break from the baby, from a 13-month-old, and took a stroll, along the river. I live in the DC area, so the Georgetown waterfront, for anybody who's familiar. And you have this gorgeous autumn day, like sun shining, not a cloud in the sky. It's cool, but it's warm because the sun is like tingling your skin, and like dogs are running around, kids are running around, people are walking, they have their coffee in their hands, and sandwich, or whatever they may be picking up, and like picnic tables on the grass and picnic blankets on the grass and whatnot. And so we stop at a little kind of like right by the river on these steps next to like a row of geese plucking their feathers, and like some kayaks in the river. And we're sort of like enjoying the moment, and like I'm internally sort of like counting the minutes, like, oh, how much more time do we have before we have to go back to the baby, and people, and I overhear a conversation. There's these four guys, and I overhear words like Vanguard, my Vanguard investment portfolio, and then I hear next time like, oh yeah, his mother has 8 million in IT stock. Oh, isn't that the American dream, like the penthouse on K Street, and and then after that there's something about like investment management, and how do you go into sales, how do you make all this money, and whatnot. And at that moment, I sort of like, my typical reaction is to like scoff at such conversations, so typical in my area. But at that moment, like something else got triggered, like something that had never been triggered before. And it was this acute feeling that I was sitting at the center of privilege, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't just like enjoy the sun and look at the geese wetting their little feet, and wow, like there's that kind of happening around me. And so I was mad at the four, and then at some point I turned around, and of course it's like four white men at their mid-20s basically. And I was mad at them. I was mad at myself for judging. I was mad at for sort of like disrupting even my own little idyllic moment. But then the next thought that came to my mind was, well, so what, right? What is any of this going to do in the next 1 to 5 years? And it made me think about all these conversations that I'm hearing people like, oh, what's the new normal going to be like, or like when is that going to be, or like we just need to plow through a few more months and then things will be back to normal, and that sort of conversation. And in my mind, it just dawned on me. There's actually, life may feel different than it hasn't that he has in a while, but it probably isn't. It's just that we're noticing it more because of this of a certain confluence of events, and whatever was maybe below the surface is now above the surface. And I think the idea of like drawing strength from hope that, okay, I just need to plow through, maybe I need to go through I need to get through this difficult moment, or I need to get through this pandemic, and then on the other side you'll be greeted by sort of like comfortable life somewhere, doing the job that you want to do and having the family that you want to have, and and that sort of a thing. But what if that's not the case? Like, that pandemic may disappear. Climate change is not going to be solved in the next 1 to 5. Thanks, Carol. 1 to 5 years. Racial injustice is not going to be solved in the next decade. Global inequity is not going to, go away anytime soon. And we may all go into our own kind of cocoon and think that, okay, well, we have our life and we have our comfort, and somebody somewhere else will take care of something else, and draw strength from that. It just dawned on me that I don't know that I can draw strength from that, like from that illusory hope that, oh well, at some point things will be better, right? Almost like outside of me, and that idea that externally things are going to be certain again, right? Like the way they were certain, I don't know, decades ago, or if they ever were. And so from this little story, my takeaway was, well, actually, everything is uncertain. Everything going to stay uncertain. The external environment is always going to be uncertain, regardless if there's a pandemic, climate change, or miraculously they disappear, right? And once you realize this, and once you think about like, well, let's not wait until I have to plow through, you know, whatever crisis, and, you know, wait 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, but sort of like go inside and think, okay, you know, things are the way they are. Like, can I draw strength from my own, in a way, kind of echoing some of what Kathryn was saying and what Carol was saying, you know, from my own values, from my own kind of sense of self, from my own sort of a clarity of, you know, of this situation. And um, and maybe it's kind of counterintuitive, because, you know, what I said may sound like apocalyptic and like on, you know, doom and gloom, but it's really not. It's really about like the awareness that, you know, frequently we go outside to look for things like strength and like hope and like things like that, but we really just need to go inside, and when we do, the strength is already there, and I think it lies in our own awareness and our own intentionality about, you know, who we are and what we want to you know, what we want to do. So those are my reflections, and yes, and I'm Zarko, in the DC area on Piscataway land, and I tend to think about leadership and democratize that idea of like, oh, these people over here are leaders, these people over there are not, and change that paradigm.
That leaves me. I'm Shahmeen Sadiq. I live in Toronto, Canada. My parents were born in India before partition, and their families split across the two countries after that happened. And my parents came here when they were in their early 20s, and I was born here. And so privilege is an interesting thing, because I believe that I have great privilege in being born in this country, that my parents decided to come here. And so that's what I'm noticing in this moment, is that there's a lot of places where, as a person who looks like me, I feel like I don't have privilege. And then there's a lot of ways in which I do, and what a rich and varied thing this privilege is. And so my work is largely, has been for the last 15 years, leadership consulting and executive coaching. But I tend to work deeply with people on their whole selves. And over the last 3 years, I've had this deepening and growing awareness that the work I've been doing, framed up in this corporate kind of buttoned up way, was not going to last much longer, was not going to be the way that I did it in the future. But I was really scared to let go of it. Because what did I have to let go of? A lot. I have a great reputation. I taught coaches for 11 of those 15 years. Seen as a leader, won some awards, stuff like that. And yet, the only kind of awareness I have of what I wanted to do was very ambiguous. It was this: I want to sit with people. I want to connect in and tune in deeply, and then see what emerges, and trust that whatever comes up, we can work with that. And I kept saying that. I would say that in conversations at dinners. I would say it in my journal when I was dreaming up, you know, in the mornings. What did I want to do differently? What did I want next? And the pandemic arrived on our doorstep here in Canada on March 12th at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. in the morning. I woke up, I was unable to sleep. I knew the shutdowns were coming. I was watching all my corporate work evaporating. And I asked, what can I do to help? And the answer that came was ridiculously clear, because I'd been casting this intention all along. Invite people to gather, create a space for people to gather, and just get grounded and tune in. And so I did. I began to invite people to join me every morning just to sit for 15 minutes. That was all it was. And I envisioned that the doctors and the nurses and the people in the hospitals would be overrun with, you know, people to care for and the virus kind of showing up. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if they could just pause for 15 minutes and just take a break from all that and just breathe? I want to create that. And so doctors and healthcare workers are not my, not my peeps. They're not my community. So who did show up were people like you, people who work with other human beings, coaches who hold space for other human beings. That's who showed up. And we began to sit every morning. And I'd love to tell you some great success story. Like, then I had hundreds of people and made thousands of dollars and everything was fine, but it wasn't. It wasn't like that. What it was one by one, people emerging, gathering. I didn't charge anything for the first 111 days. I went every day, 7 days a week with this group, and it grew slowly. We'd have about 10 or 15 people every day who would show up. And now we're at around the 200th day or so. It's no longer free. It's a very modest charge to join. And the numbers did not grow and replace my corporate income. But what has happened is extraordinary, because I see this small group of people who are willing to show up every day. Now it's half an hour. We sit for 15 minutes. We allow whatever is present to just, you know, be there. Usually an inquiry or something of a personal nature comes through. I receive a lot of guidance when I'm quiet enough to be open to it. And then we spend the next 15 minutes just reflecting on what we're noticing. And it has been a lifeline. It has been more transformative than the large dollar value and time heavy corporate leadership development programs that I have engaged in with my clients for 15 years. This is more powerful than any of that. We have weathered the uncertainty. We continue to sit in it. Some of our members are now in shutdown again, lockdown again. In certain parts of Canada are locking down. We've dealt with our depression. We sit with what is, and there's no solution. I don't mean to sound pessimistic, but you know, we don't know what's going to happen on any given day. We don't know how this virus will continue. And then you add all the other things that have happened in the last few months. And all I know is to continue to show up and sit and see what emerges and trust it is workable. And so that's what I've been doing. And that's my take on, you know, how to be with uncertainty. I've got no other prescription other than that. And I thank you for hearing my story and being willing to listen to all of us. Yeah, find a space every day for yourself to be quiet. That's the advice, the guidance that keeps coming through me. So thank you.
Thank you, Shahmeen, and thank you everyone for sharing your story. I'd like to invite now everybody who's who's here with us and who was hearing us speak. Maybe do a little reflection on what you heard and what's resonating. So I'm going to type a couple of questions in the chat, which are what's emerging here for you and what new connections are you making about strength in uncertainty. I guess it could be about other things, but maybe on that topic. And we'll just pause. We're not going to do a chat flow, so you can type and press enter as you please. But we'll just pause and we'd like to really kind of sense into what's coming up for everybody in attendance, and from there, like Shahmeen said, we'll tune into what's happening and kind of continue the conversation with you. So whenever you're ready, add your reflections to the questions in the chat.
So while waiting for everybody, are we also, can we also chime in with some of the things that come to us, or is this mostly for, oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. And also I think, you know, doing a little time check, we might want to collapse the sense making and the harvesting together, both within us and also with the people, participants. So yeah, so I think hearing all the stories, yeah, there's quite a few things that come up. One is fear. I think in our old ways, or in when we perceive certainty, there's less fear, there's more safety. And when there's uncertainty, fear. And I think in all of our stories, we are exploring different ways of facing fear and living with it. And maybe even allowing it to shift. Not trying to get rid of it, but allowing it to shift and see whatever emerges, in Shahmeen's words. So that was really powerful to me.
What I'm noticing is I'm reading the chat, and I'm just noticing that a lot of people are resonating with kind of this, what I would call surrender, that I think has been a theme through all 5 of our stories. And I'm curious, and I love that, because I know so many people who try to control their way through difficult times. So it seems like a lot of the attendees here have either resonate with that or have some sort of a comfort level with that. And what I'd love to know is how does that, like, how are you with that? Like, is it, how is it for you to be that way, to be, to allow for whatever is present to be there, and to kind of pause and not jump so quickly? I'd love it if you'd tell me more about that in the chat. Because I think what people want to know, a lot of people who don't do it that way want to know, how do you do that? Like, how do you tolerate it?
While we're letting people get that in the chat, I just want to respond, because a big one for me is community. Like, I have a small group of people that I lean on almost daily, that know me and know what matters to me and help me stay grounded and connected to that when I fly away from it, or I fear away from it, or I forget about it. And so just this idea of not being alone in it and having others to help bring me back is deeply important.
Yeah. And I'm just going to read some of what I see here. Uncertainty is not new. One goes within. Someone else, Mukesh, has started a free weekly session. That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, knowing that we're not alone. Kind of coming into peace. And Nurada says, let go of what is outside of my control. That's awesome.
There was an earlier comment in the chat line about having the courage to even pause. So it's not even the courage to surrender or the courage to tolerate, but it's even just that first step of the courage to make the space or to quiet yourself or to just slow down. And so there's also this piece about the acceleration of everything around us. And sometimes that chaos or uncertainty feels like speed, feels that we can't control the acceleration and that things are moving very quickly and shifting very quickly under our feet. And so I really want to amplify that comment of it can take some internal strength just to slow down and remind yourself that just because the world is speeding past doesn't mean you have to. You also have an opportunity to pause. So I love that.
Yeah, I just want to build on that pause, the courage to pause. And also I think oftentimes people just think that, okay, I paused. Now nothing important is happening. I have all the fire on my roof. I have, but now I'm attending to my body. What? No, I have my body all my life. What's so important about it? Like, I think that's a very common way. And then after 2 minutes of pausing, people are like, I'm done with this.
Yeah, one of the things, so Shahmeen and Meg and I know each other and geek out about things a bunch. And one of the things that thematically that I hear in our conversations is that everybody wants that quick fix, and the stuff that is emerging now, it is not a quick fix. It requires sitting, and Shahmeen kind of gave me this framework. It requires sitting with yourself first, then sitting with others and being able to listen. And the solutions are going to come from that, but it's not going to be we did it one time and there it was. I mean, this is a long haul to actually address the real things that are going on. And so, yeah, the courage to say, I'm going to sign up for the real conversations that aren't going to have solutions and are going to feel like we're not moving. And I'm going to stand for those in organizations and with my clients, and to say, I only want to do the real thing. Takes courage.
I have a friend who says this all the time. He says, his name is Jim Anderson, and he says, what I can't not be. What I can't not be. So the value of this pause for me is that it is in the pause that what I can't not be emerges. And that is, what is that? That's the real me. That's the essence of me, the truth of me, which, is probably the truth of we. We all have our own flavor of it. But there comes a point where you can't not be that. It's impossible to pretend anymore. It's impossible to kind of muscle through anymore and try to be someone other than who you really are. And I love that, that it's not so much like it's a decision, like I want to be this. It's more like I can't be anything other than who I really am. And sometimes I think the most difficult circumstances push us to that place where resistance is futile.
What comes to mind is kind of going off of what Carol said, is that idea that, pausing, when you're pausing, you're doing nothing. When you're writing an email, you're doing something. And you're always going to choose doing something over doing nothing, right? Because we're conditioned to think that doing something means we're providing value. Like we're being busy, we're being productive, we're being XYZ. And it's the same thing with even the sort of like the workaholism primarily in this country, but not only, where the more hours you work, like the better you are, because you're like, oh, you're productive. I'm working. I'm getting that more money in the account, and then what are you going to do with that money, by the way? And at what cost? And so I think it's really hard. I mean, I do the same thing. Like at some point, I'll block off. I'll be like, okay, this 1 hour I'm going to work on this project, right? And then if I don't make progress, I'm like, I lost an hour. Like, why didn't I move forward? Like, why didn't I advance with this project? How am I going to make it up? And it's like that idea that you have to kind of constantly create time out of nothing, to compensate for something that you thought you would have done. But like, what if we actually started placing value on the pauses, right? Like nobody, like, I mean, it's totally made up. It's totally made up that we're placing value on the emails that we send. Like that's like like literally, like I guarantee you that like half of the emails that you send are probably meaningless and don't serve a purpose, right? And yet we do that. So that's the one side of it, and then I think the other side of it is that idea of like doing it for a future benefit. It's like, how do I justify to myself meditating? Like, if I meditate today, I'll feel more focused tomorrow, the day after, and like something will change in me if I am like calmer, right? Or like if I have a practice of X, like something else will happen at a certain later point in time, and that is constantly a justification. And I mean, it's silly. In a way, it works, because at least I'm meditating, even for the reward of that later, later benefit. But like unlearning that idea of, whatever it is that I'm doing or whatever it is that is happening must serve a purpose, must have a tangible, outcome. Basically, I think traps us into this kind of hamster on a wheel lifestyle. And away from what we've been talking about, like surrender and pausing and sort of like tuning into what is, to what is there, and to being who you cannot not be.
Yeah, thank you, Zarko. And I'm reading what I think Anuradha, sorry if I mispronounce your name, but she said, I feel pause is a lot of work too, because creating a pause and reflection is tough work and highly valuable. Yeah, I think there's a lot that goes with what Zarko said. I think it's because the underlying assumption is pause is useless. And it's a sign of weakness when you pause and when you don't toughen through. And so now I'm really curious, Aruranda, like, what to you is the toughest part in creating pause? Is it mostly coming from internal judgment? Is it coming from people around you who will judge you, or you think they will judge you? Is it from literally like your day is just, from task to task to task? So I think those are the questions I think is worth asking for all of us, and looking a little deeper into what are some barriers in us creating pause, opportunities to pause for ourselves in our life.
I have a response to that question. It is a story I tell myself about wasting time. It is a belief I have about wasting time, and that wasting time is not good, and that it is useless. And yet, the most beautiful poems come when I go for a walk. The most beautiful paintings are made when I carve out a couple hours to just draw something. The the hardest work that I have done, like this summer, I wasted this summer, and I know this stuff and I'm teaching this stuff and I'm still subject to it. I lost the summer trying so hard to come up with some new programs and website and this and that. And I wasted it because, and that was the waste. That was actually the waste, not the time I spent with my kids or the time I spent walking outside or the time I spent painting. It was the time I was digging in. I wasted my summer digging in, and I missed the sun. I missed my children. I missed a whole bunch of other things that really matter to me because I have this limiting belief and this crazy illusion that I subscribe to when I'm not conscious, that effort, to Zarko's point, equals value, that productivity equals value. And I think the most powerful thing we can do is continue to notice when that has happened. Because if we want to challenge these old stories, we have to practice cultivating the noticing. How do I notice that that is what's happened? And sometimes the noticing comes late. 2 months of summer went by before I noticed.
Thanks, Shahmeen. I just want to add to that too. It was a really powerful shift for me when I started playing with what if it could be easy? Because making time is hard, pausing is hard, creating space is hard, everything's hard. And it is. But it's also my story, my truth. So if I'm telling myself it's hard, by God, it will be hard. And when I started playing with, well, listen, if it's all made up stuff I'm telling myself anyway, what if I just played with what would the easy way look like? And what if it were easy? What if it weren't hard? And the different possibilities that emerge from that way of thinking have blown my mind. So I just want to offer, like, play with, what if it weren't hard? See what shows up.
Kathryn, that reminds me that the same way Carol was saying that for us, rest means we aren't productive, or or as Zarko said, we're not providing value. When things are easy, there's also like some baggage there, right? Like somehow we're not allowed to have things easy, or that easy equals lazy, or that easy equals sloppy, or that easy equals I don't know, even maybe unprofessional. And so I think there's also this idea that pause, ease, rest are all these complicated concepts that are simple. It's sort of simple in practice, and yet we've like added all this cultural baggage to those ideas that keep us from exploring them more deeply, or I know I feel resistance to things being easy because I think, oh, but somehow I'm supposed to perform that it's hard, or that there's some unspoken agreement in our society that things have to be hard and rigorous. So I'd be curious what other people have to say about that.
Yeah, I really love to build on it. Two things. One is, and then I'm reading, Anu was saying, who decides what is hard or easy? And I think we somehow come to a direction in our culture that we define for each other what is easy, what is hard, and what you should do, what you shouldn't do. And also that, for you to be successful, it has to be hard work. Now I'm almost questioning that. What is the underlying assumption about that? Is it a poverty mindset? Meaning we're all born poor, that's who we are. And in order to have some success or get material or get successful in any way, we have to go out, reach out, and to do really hard work. So that means most of us belong to the poor, to being poor, however you want to define it. It might not be money, but poor in success or whatever. So how have we come to this culture where poverty is where we belong, and then to get out of it you have to do hard work, and what is hard, and so it just makes me challenge all of these assumptions.
I think there's a really good point here from Silvana, who says that this paradigm of hard work and effort is also a very Western concept, and that there may be other cultures where that isn't a belief. So that's a great point. Thank you for raising that, because it's easy to paint everything with the brush of our own privilege, isn't it?
Yes, I totally resonate with that. And I also, Shahmeen, think it's Western, and but it's also like capitalist, that idea that every activity we do has a monetary value, or every effort we make has to have value, as Zarko was saying before. So while culturally I think it's different across the world, there's also this like flavor of capitalism and commerce that seek to like take our, so that our attention and our brains and our productivity are attached to currency.
Mm-hmm.
So that's there too, as like an expectation that I think even transcends culture.
Absolutely. And I would also add that another paintbrush that has painted our landscape is the patriarchal nature of our world. The valuing of the masculine energies of striving and driving and making things happen. And as we can see here, there are more people on this in this group today who are familiar with and resonating with the more feminine qualities of allowing and receiving and pausing and sitting. And sitting is not like doing nothing, as we've been discussing. It's actually a very active receptivity. It's an act of active receptivity. Yet the value that is placed on that in a patriarchal world is very small. And I think that what's happening right now, I feel like we're in a move towards sort of bringing these two energies together, to have the best of the masculine kind of striving, driving energies, but also to allow a rise in the valuing of the more feminine energies. And that actually is a theme that is also underneath a lot of what I'm noticing in the last year or so, and in a lot of the work that I'm doing, even when the clients are men. So this is not a gender related thing. This is energetics that I'm speaking of. I feel like this would be a good time for us to begin to kind of bring this, put a bit of a container around this so we can bring it to a close. And so one of the things I'd love, if you're willing in the chat, is to just write a sentence or so about what are you noticing now. Now we've been here for about 45 minutes together. What are you noticing about this panel, about this conversation, about strength and uncertainty, and about yourself? You don't have to wait for me to just press enter whenever you're ready if you've written something. Mukesh is excited, got some insights. Awesome, awesome. What else? Go ahead, Carol, you were going to say something.
Yeah, it just occurred to me talking about easy. What is easy to do? And I wonder if we can also just share some kind of resources that we know that is easy for us to access. For example, you know, Shahmeen, I know you started a group, and I imagine it's online, whether it's open to other people. And I actually have also a weekly routine that's done 4 times a week, where people come and sit for half an hour. And I imagine other people have too. And I think, you know, let's share it, not in a way of like wanting other people's attention, but just providing it as a resource, as a tool. It might make it easier for you to block a window to just pause. Now that you have a whole group, it is a good excuse. So maybe in the chat, we can also share some of those resources where we find it's really useful for ourselves.
I think that there's a lot of resonance around the what if it was easy. Thank you so much, Kathryn, for bringing that forward so explicitly. I mean, goodness me, what if it was? Like, how cool is that? I'm just reading Sylvana's comment here. So maybe when it sounds like what you're saying, Sylvana, is that it's easier to dance with loss when it's something that happens more, or that you're more accustomed to. Not that it's pleasant, but that there's a different resilience perhaps that you've built from those kinds of experiences. So we've got the joy dancers with Kathryn and Jen, and then you're all welcome to join the Power Pause if you want to. I gave you the website there. What other resources do we have to share? Awesome. Carol's collective breather. Excellent. Ah. What time is the joy party, Kathryn?
Tuesdays at 10:30 Eastern and Wednesdays at 7:30 a.m. These are both a.m. Easters. I'll put it in the chat too. So Wednesdays at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Oh, that's Tuesdays, sorry. I don't know what the heck day it is at any given time.
Awesome. Great.
Hey, Meg, for a hot second, will you just say what the virtual sanctuary is?
Absolutely. So for anyone who's interested, Carol and I and a couple of our other colleagues are experimenting, sort of pushing the boundaries of what can happen in Zoom and what kind of experience we can create for people virtually that feels like sanctuary and being together, and feels like pause, and feels like belonging, and without agenda. And so we're going to be prototyping some of these online events in October and November. And so you can email myself or Carol if you'd like to be included in that invite.
Awesome. Well, I've lost track of the time. I'm noticing that I've lost track of the timing here. So I feel like we're close to the end and we need to move into our checkout. And so just want to say too that part of this whole thing about kind of being in emergence and uncertainty is there are certain practices that we've actually done here with you. One is we did a grounding, and in that grounding we sort of created a container, a temporary container for us to have this conversation with each other. And the other thing we did was we allowed for, just a check-in where everybody has a chance to say, this is what I'm noticing in my body right now. It could be any question. You can use these practices. And we also gave a chance for each person to speak. And notice that the speaking was not a dialogue. It was just a sharing and a receiving from those who were listening. So that's another structure that you can use when in uncertainty. And then we did a little bit of sort of meaning making or kind of conversation informed by all of that emergence that we allowed for. And now what we'll do is we'll bring it to a close with a checkout, which just gives us a chance to let this container dissolve. We let go of it now. And so then we can all move on into whatever is next. So I'll hand it over to Kathryn for the checkout.
Thanks, Shahmeen, and thank you to everyone on the panel. You guys are fab. I really enjoyed this time with you. And thank you, Meenakshi, as well, for being our awesome Coacharya moderator, and to everyone that participated. This was something we co-created, and it wouldn't have been as juicy had you not participated the way you did. So thank you. So the checkout, and again, I'll put it in the Zoom, and this does not need to be a chatterfall. So just write and hit return. What was your most important takeaway from today for you? Let me hit enter and make sure it goes through. There it is. I'm just going to holler out some of the things I'm hearing. So many people willing, everyone's like, what do you, Kathryn, get up in there. Many people willing to embrace the feminine, inspiration to create the space for others in your community. There's so many flavors of pause to experiment with. Each one can do something to support the greater community. The veils are thinning. Truth is being exposed. Remembering on how to do life. Truth is being exposed and remembered. Inspiration to create the space for others. Yeah, the value of pausing. What if it's not hard? Pause, breathe, and flow. Thank you, everyone. Meg, over to you. Oh, hold on. The dominant stories in our culture about who we are and should be how powerful they are and powerless at the same time. Yes.
Yeah, that last one from Carol gave me goosebumps. I think there's a piece here back to something Shahmeen said a few minutes ago, or maybe even toward the beginning of the talk, about just allowing, letting go. That surrender doesn't have to be a dirty word. It doesn't have to be weak. And so there's a sense of giving ourselves permission to slow down, and permission to pause, and permission to be easy. So thank you to everyone, again, our organizers and our panelists and everybody who attended. Thank you for letting it be easy. you were just part of this experiment, and we just did it together, where we worked through what was emerging, and we did it with intention and with pauses. So we all know that now you're all capable of slowing down. So we invite you to join us in our other community spaces, and we hope that you have an excellent rest of your week. Thank you. Thank you.
And with the extra time, go pause.
Yeah, with the extra time, please go pause. Take some deep breaths, lay down, do a dance party.
Go outside.
That was just phenomenal. Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much, Meg, and all the panelists. And what a wonderful experience this was. And it's my head is just brimming with ideas on what I can do to bring this to my community and share this with others. Just fantastic. I'm just feeling so grateful that I got to be a part of this, and because I think if I was not a webinar host for this, I'm not sure if I would have made the time to attend this. I would have said, oh, I'll catch the recording. But I think being here live has been an experience in itself, and just fantastic. Thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining us today. And I'll be saving the chat so that I can pass it off to folks at Coacharya. We can find a way, because there were tons of resources. So we might just, find a way to save that and attach that. And then of course the recording will be on the YouTube channel. And I'm just plugging in the schedule info for the rest of the sessions for the remainder of the 2 weeks of this virtual conference. So please do come back. And yeah, this is just fantastic. Thank you. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you all. It's been a total joy.
Absolutely.
Be well. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
Bye. Got it.